right. My name is Sean Van Diver. That's SHAWN-VANDIVER. All one word, V and D are capitalized. We're going to get started in just a moment. I'll give a couple remarks and then then I'll MC. We have a large number of speakers that we'll get through pretty quickly, and then you're welcome to ask questions at the end. Some of our speakers may have to depart. If you're looking for a quote, if you're looking for anything like that, get in touch with me or Matt, and we will get you that quote or get you that interview. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for gathering here today aboard the USS Midway. My name is Sean Van Diver, and I lead Afghan evac. I'm going to share a few thoughts here, and then we'll MC. We're gathered here today with Republicans and Democrats, political leaders from all over San Diego County, and our wartime allies, as well as a few veterans who are out here today to make something very clear. Every level of government is represented from across San Diego County here today. And we've got we're going to be announcing a letter released by a bipartisan group of legislators, a bipartisan bicameral group of legislators of the state. This letter was led by Afghan American Senator Aisha Wahab and Assembly members Chris Ward and Greg Wallace. The letter demands that Speaker McCarthy and Leader Schumer call a vote on the Afghan Adjustment Act. This bill, the Afghan Adjustment Act, would provide yet another round of security vetting for the more than 80,000 Afghan allies who arrived in the summer of 2021 and have been in limbo since. Once they pass that vetting, there's a pathway for a permanent residency and citizenship here in our country. It is no less than their shot at the American dream. These folks have earned that shot at the American dream. We are calling directly on Speaker McCarthy and Leader Schumer to prioritize a vote on this bill, the Afghan Adjustment. We're standing on an aircraft carrier that traveled the world defending our American values and our interests, and itself played a part in aiding our wartime allies in the 1970s after the fall of Saigon, as it was off the coast of Vietnam, aiding our at-risk allies. These Afghans fought side by side with us, shoulder to shoulder, through 20 years of war. And with this one bill, we can begin to repay that debt. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to my Assembly member and a strong ally to Afghans, Assembly member Chris Ward.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you everybody for being here. My name is Chris Ward, State Assembly member for the 78th Assembly District, representing a lot of our central communities here in the city of San Diego, as well as the city of El Cajon. And I'm here as one of the co-authors of this legislative letter, now more than 24 legislators in the state of California and growing, to really speak up for the tens of thousands of Afghan refugees who are facing an uncertain future, many of whom are here in the state of California. Here specifically in San Diego, they're seeking a better future. They arrived through humanitarian parole, and they have no path to citizenship, unlike an immigrant visa or other refugee programs. Many thousand more still are in Afghanistan struggling to pick up some of those pieces. These are our allies who fought alongside our U.S. troops. They're now in danger of being left behind. We are not going to abandon them. That's why we are all here to support the Afghan Adjustment Act. We're urging Congress to pass this important piece of legislation that would allow allies left behind a way to come to the United States. Importantly, give refugees who are already here a path to permanent residency and protect our national security. And importantly, help the state and local governments with the resources necessary to fully help them become a part of our community. It's the right thing to do for our allies, and I'm very grateful that we've got strong bipartisan support here in the state of California, urging Congress, and particularly Speaker McCarthy and our Senate leadership, to do the right thing. We're also grateful for some of my co-partners like Senator Aisha Wahab and Assemblymember Greg Wallace from Palm Springs, and of course Sean Van Diver and Afghan evac for their tireless advocacy of this issue and standing up for our Afghan brothers and sisters who are simply seeking a better life here in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Next up, we've got El Cajon Mayor Bill Wells, who represents a large number of Afghans in our region. Mayor?
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Bill Wells. I'm the mayor of El Cajon, and as Sean said, we have a large and growing number of Afghans in our community, so this act is very important to me. These brave men and women served alongside American soldiers, sailors, and Marines. And as the father of a Marine who fought in Afghanistan and worked with translators, I'm well aware of the sacrifices. More important, I'm well aware of the grave risks that they face from the radical Taliban regime, which is now in power. Assuring them safe harbor in this county, in this country, is a debt that we must pay. This is an uncommon level of bipartisan support for this legislation. I'm hopeful that the Senate and the House can take this up soon and pass the act and establish a legal and orderly process for these refugees. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Wells. Up next, we've got San Diego City Council member Raul Campillo, who also represents several Afghans.
Thank you, Sean, and good morning, everyone. My name is Raul Campillo. I represent San Diego City Council District 7, and in my Serra Mesa neighborhood, we are the core of the Afghan community here in San Diego County. Now, I'm not only doing this because my constituents really want to see their family members, their relatives be reunited here in San Diego. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do for both the humanitarian reasons. We have people scattered across the world wondering when they're going to see their families next after spending decades supporting American interests across the world. But it's also a national security issue. The enemies of democracy and the enemies of the United States will be able to say to those in their country, don't defend the United States, because when things get rough, the United States won't back you. That's why we need the House to take this up and to support this and send this to the desk of President Biden, because we want to send our allies and those who believe in our democratic values that if they stand with us, we will have their back. If things go bad, if their country falls, they will be able to count on the United States to take care of them and their families and make sure that their sacrifice is honored and respected. And that is a deeply important reason for us to do this as a country. Of course, I want to make sure that my constituents in District 7 are seeing their aunts and uncles, their grandparents reunited right here in San Diego, where they can continue to build the small businesses and provide public service that they've already been involved in for decades. That's why we need to do this. So thank you very much to Afghan EVAC. We want to see this passed, and I urge and demand that the House of Representatives and the Senate take this up and see this passed and signed by the President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Campillo. One point on that, we have the votes. We know that if this gets onto the House floor and the Senate floor, it will pass. Next up, we have Army veteran Chris Purdy, who represents the Evacuate Our Allies Coalition and Veterans for American Ideals.
Thanks, Sean.
Get him a good shot.
Morning, I'm Chris Purdy. As Sean said, I'm the director of Veterans for American Ideals, an organization of about 10,000 veterans nationwide committed to human rights. And it's been 797 days since Kabul fell. 797 days since the American government abandoned its commitment to the Afghan people. 797 days since veterans, Afghan Americans, frontline civilians, just everyday people dropped everything and pick up where the government left off. Since then, the American people have continued fighting for our Afghan allies. During the evacuation, we pushed the government to relocate as many as possible. And those who resettled here in the United States arrived and were welcomed by our communities. We received them in our homes, we received them in our neighborhoods, we received them in our hearts. But what our new neighbors really need, and what would finally close the chapter of August 15th, is if the U.S. would make good on its promise to give permanency to our Afghan allies. You see, right now there are 70,000 Afghan refugees here in the United States who do not have a viable way to stay in this country permanently. In the 797 days since the evacuation, they've been living on temporary status. Temporary housing, temporary employment, temporarily sending their kids to neighborhood schools. This is unacceptable, and our allies cannot fully integrate into our community without permanent status, and that's what the Afghan Adjustment Act does. Sean said we have the votes. There are, in the Senate, there are about 20 co-sponsors in the Senate. In the House, there are 42 bipartisan co-sponsors in the House. This is a wildly bipartisan bill. And Sean is absolutely right. If this gets on the floor of both chambers, it passes, it goes to the president's desk, and those 70,000 Afghans do not have to live in a temporary status anymore. I'm grateful today for the show of support from the leaders of California, led by Republicans. We should note that the Afghan Adjustment Act was written in part by Senator Graham, a Republican. They know what it means to honor our commitment to our wartime allies. If only our national leaders show the same commitment to American values and a solution, then we don't have to wait another 979 days. Excuse me, another 797 days. There we go. To honor our commitment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Next up, we have Homaira Yusufi from the Partnership for New America.
Hello, my name is Homaira Yusufi. I'm with the Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans. We are an organization located right here in San Diego. We serve refugee and newcomer communities, and over the last 2+ years, we have worked with our over 80,000 Afghan communities nationally, but also locally. Many of the ones who have been resettled regionally need support in terms of immigration help, finding a place to live, sending their kids to school. Rebuilding home in the United States is not easy. I would know. I'm part of the Afghan diaspora community who was resettled here in San Diego a few decades ago. And my personal story and those of the folks that I see daily is similar in the sense that we don't get to bring our social networks when we come and have to rebuild the United States, in the United States. We don't get to bring our work and our certifications, and many of our families struggle to, just make ends meet. However, my family had the opportunity to have permanent residency when they arrived here. So even though it was rough, we persevered, and oftentimes we see refugee communities persevering on a daily basis. I myself was able to go to school here. I was able to get my master's at UC Berkeley and now pursue my dream of being able to help other communities. However, our newcomer Afghan communities are living in constant fear of losing their immigration status. They're living in constant fear of actually having to lose their hard-earned jobs that they've worked so hard to get, and that their kids, their children, their daughters, like myself, who came here to rebuild their lives, might get deported and have to go back to Afghanistan where they cannot pursue their dreams. And so, as a member of the community with Evacuate Our Allies, we really want to urge and Afghan evac for Congress to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act to allow the opportunity for Afghans who have come into our communities, who are part of our communities now, to really be able to permanently call America home. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Myra. Next up, we have from the Afghan evac team, Romat Mokhtar.
Good morning. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. Just say this. So my name is Ramat Mokhtar. I'm a volunteer with the Afghan evac Coalition. I have been part of this coalition because it matters to me a lot. Number one, I'm Afghan from Afghanistan, coming from a minority community. And then I was associated as interpreter with our military presence in Afghanistan. So today I'm here to just remind all of us and then the Congress and to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act because I'm representing a minority community being hysterically prosecuted, suffering from a slow genocide in Afghanistan. The Hazaras have been hysterically targeted in the past 20 years. They have been struggling and facing bombs and suicide attacks and target attack in their masjids and their maternity centers. Everywhere they have been attacked, and very few of them have had the chance to make to the United States, who work with our troops in Afghanistan. And the Afghan Adjustment Act, or any act or any effort that can support to keep these folks here safe and give them a chance of not getting deported and facing prosecution, discrimination, hysteric violence against their religious faith or racial association because of their ethnicity. I will support this no matter what takes. I will be there and support this. Today, as an American, as a person who worked with the military in Afghanistan, and just as a citizen, I'm pleading for Congress and for politicians, please pass this Afghan Adjustment Act that provides a safety and a chance for those who made to stay here. And then there's a lot of interpreters, folks who work with us in Afghanistan that haven't made yet. And as Raul pointed, who will trust our men in the uniform in the future if we don't do our moral duty here? So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahmat. A couple notes about Rahmat. Our country is a much better place because of folks like Rahmat. He happened to be Representative Scott Peters' guest to the State of the Union this year. And Representative Peters is an original co-author on the Afghan Adjustment Act. And the bill enjoys nearly unanimous support from our congressional delegation here. Next up, we have San Diego School Board Trustee, Shayna Hazen.
Good morning. As Vice President of the San Diego Unified School Board and a mom committed to ensuring all children can reach their full potential, I am here today to call on Speaker McCarthy and Leader Schumer to prioritize a vote and for Congress to immediately pass the Afghan Adjustment Act. Afghan children across our country have fled violence and persecution and have come here with their families to seek refuge and get a good education so they can lead thriving lives. But today, because of their uncertain immigration status as humanitarian parolees, these children and families are living in limbo, unsure when the rug will be pulled out from under them and when they will be told they must leave the United States. Imagine the instability, anxiety, and fear you would feel not knowing if you would be allowed to live in the US. Now multiply that by the 80,000 Afghan evacuees who live with that uncertain future here in our communities on a daily basis. In San Diego Unified, there are nearly 200 Afghan students in our schools today who we have welcomed with open arms. Students we are proud to provide social, emotional, and academic support to so that they can succeed. These students deserve a bright future just like all of our children. But without the Afghan Adjustment Act, their future remains uncertain. Last week, my daughter came home from school to tell me that a boy in her class who fled Afghanistan with his family just a few years ago told her that if she lived where he came from, she couldn't go to school. She was shocked, but the sad reality is that in Afghanistan, girls and women have been deprived of the right to an education that we take for granted. They are not allowed to attend secondary school or earn a higher education. As I think about the ramifications of not passing the Afghan Adjustment Act, I think about all the young women and girls who will miss out on the education they need to reach their full potential if they don't have a path to permanent residency and are forced to return to their home country. As we approach the 2-year anniversary of the US military's withdrawal from Afghanistan, I urge Congress to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act. Families are waiting on us, and we have no time to waste.
Thank you so much, Trustee Hazen. Really appreciate your comments. We have one more speaker. Our final speaker is a champion for refugees and someone who represents the bulk of the Afghan population here in San Diego. Supervisor Joel Anderson.
First of all, I want to thank Sean and his team at Afghan Evac. The work they've done has been incredible. And I'm very proud. I represent the largest community of refugees west of the Mississippi. And we've, for the longest time I can remember, my district has been welcoming refugees with open arms, giving them a place to stay and being part of our community. But what concerns me most, and one of the things I'm most proud of, is we're standing together in a bipartisan way at multi-layers of government. While we don't serve on the federal level, we serve here on this board from every level of society shy of the federal government. And we stand united because we understand these people stood with us. They not only earned it, but they deserve permanent status with a path to citizenship. And that's why we stand together to call on Speaker McCarthy and Leader Schumer to give this a vote. We believe the American people have always done the right thing throughout the world, and we need to be that beacon of hope. And when we fail to deliver on our worldly promises, we fail not only these refugees, but every citizen in the United States. I'm proud to stand with these great people for a righteous cause, and I hope that we bring this to a speedy end and give these people a path to citizenship. These aren't just refugees. These people are our allies. They stood for us, and now it's time to stand for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. This, I'll end with some concluding remarks, then we'll take some questions. You heard it several times here today. There just aren't that many issues or communities that could bring together a group like this, a group like what we have behind me here. Left and right, from the squad to the Freedom Caucus, if we're talking federally, every part of the San Diego experience is represented up here. And we're all standing here shouting that we need to embody the Navy and Marine Corps' core values of honor, courage, and commitment, and do what this ship did back in the 70s, which is stand by our wartime allies, finish the job, get them to safety. With that, we're happy to take any questions.
Do one-on-ones.
Yes, you can do one-on-ones. Some of the speakers will have to leave soon. But if there are no questions for the broader group, maybe we can do one quick.
Just a quick question. How
Sure.
many refugees are in San Diego County?
That number fluctuates a lot because of secondary migration and all of that. I know that at one point we had 5,000 arrivals from Afghanistan here, just in the case of the withdrawal. But I can't give you a more solid number. I don't know if anybody else.
Up to 5,000.
Up to 5,000. There you go. Just Afghan, not other.
No, not much.
Any other questions? All right, let's do one quick group photo. Let's get everybody in here. Give you your 2-shot or whatever, your 8-shot. All right, I think we're good. With that, we can thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we can do one-on-ones.